Hello, New Zealand. Welcome to Political Playback. It's episode number 34. We're doing pretty well, only 16 to go, and we can celebrate on a rooftop somewhere, Simon. Simon O'Connor, nice to have you.
I'm just trying to think of what rooftops I know. Actually, there's a wonderful bar at the bottom of Queen Street now. That's a pretty cool place to go, literally and figuratively.
Okay, very good. Look, we're going to start off with a poll question today. I'm going to show you two flags. Simon, can you just tell me which of these would be hate speech? So this is one. Please walk on me. Is that hate speech? Or please walk on me? Is that hate speech? Which of those two would be deemed to be hate speech? It's a trick
Well, you'd want a
question.
consistent approach to both, wouldn't you? But at the moment, that one there, our national ensign, is part of a display in Nelson from an
Mm.
artist provocatively to ask people to walk all over it. Of course, if you were to do that, as people did things to, let's say, rainbow crossings, and excuse the French, all hell would break loose, and you
Yeah.
would be charged for incitement and all sorts of things. It just goes to illustrate, again, the big problem with progressivism is it chooses sides, and you're either one thing or the other. And it harks back to, I know, other things we'll talk about, Bob, too, tonight. The left are very good at complaining about things, but then doing the same things themselves.
Okay, I see you got dressed up for tonight, so that's good. I'm impressed. Very good. I forgot to. It was because I had another interview to do earlier on, so I got distracted. This art, apparently this is art. Please walk on me. It's called Flagging the Future. It's by an established Māori artist, Diana Prince. It was first shown in an exhibit 30 years ago at the Auckland Art Gallery, which I've never been to either. The exhibition, titled Diane Prince Activist Artist, emphasises Māori rights, particularly those of Māori women. So those must be a woman's legs, are they? And framed by past and present Māori activism. And so apparently that is okay, but if you dared to even think about walking on that, all hell would break loose, as you said, Simon. The good news is that a friend called Ruth Tipu went into the art gallery and she says she's going to do it every day it's on the floor. She's just going to go in there and she's going to fix the art. So, Ruth, you deserve a King's Service Medal for doing that. But it's highly ironic, isn't it, Simon? Yeah.
It is. I mean, we talked about Andrea Vance last week, and I said, they would say misogyny's bad, racism's bad, sexism's bad,
Mm,
defacing symbols is bad, except
mm,
when it suits them.
yeah.
So Andrea's comments to female MPs, and here it is again, our national flag, which people have died under,
Yeah.
is more than happy to be trampled upon. I mean, put the Maori sovereignty flag,
Oh,
you can walk on it, you'd be beaten to a pulp. And by the way,
exactly.
what I said at the start hold. We need to be consistent. We shouldn't actually be defacing any of these symbols.
No. Okay. I noticed that the deputy mayor, Rohan O'Neill Stevens, defended the artwork, emphasising its role in challenging perspectives. I
Oh,
Is there a rainbow crossing in Nelson? Because if there was, I reckon somebody should just go and put "Please walk on me" on it. But
oh,
then
yes,
again, a
an
rainbow
artistic
crossing you're
expression.
supposed to.
I've
Anyway,
never met him, but he's a child almost.
mm,
And by the way, that's just artistic expression on my behalf if someone thinks
mm,
that I'm being aggressive. He's just a child, very far left, green leaning activist. God knows how he is the deputy mayor of Nelson. I just don't know, or how Nick
no,
Smith works with him.
no, that's right. But anyway, I this is lovely. Anyway, good on her. And she's going to keep doing it, and hopefully she really upsets them. All right, let's get into our first topic. And firstly, social media bans obviously have been the topic du jour for a number of weeks. Everybody seems to be talking about it. We did some polling on it as a result of the government starting the conversation and even getting some support. And here's the interesting thing. So, Simon, a year ago, we actually polled on this issue because we were, as you know, ahead of the game and were encouraging people to have this discussion. So we polled on it a year ago. And then as a result of this discussion, we polled again just last week. And here's the results. Last year, so the green is support and the orange is oppose. And you can see the support has gone up significantly, and let me just enlarge that, and the oppose has gone down. So it just shows with a little bit of discussion. And then today in the Post, suddenly they're printing articles that apparently screen addicted children are a public health emergency. And yet back in 2020, when we put before the select committee a request for a review of that, they sort of said nothing to see here. And then today as well, the Post were right onto it. They had an article about filtered internet for under 18s needed for online safety. Guess what? Back in 2020, we also put up some legislation that the Minister of Internal Affairs at the time, which was Tracy Martin from New Zealand First, and guess who opposed it? Labour and Greens. So it seems like there's the will to do it. We've been talking about it for a while, Simon, but political willpower just doesn't seem to be there, especially from Labour and Greens, ironically.
Yeah, they are ironic on a number of levels. In fact, they act like conservatives. They're very slow in just holding on to what is. Isn't that paradoxical? But yeah, I think it's important to put that out there in the public. It has been Labour, Greens, and probably the likes of Te Pāti Māori, and possibly ACT as well from a libertarian point of view, who have been saying, hey, we just don't want to progress with this. I know for Tracy Martin, the then minister, it was very frustrating to have that torpedoed. But two other quick points, Bob. I mean, first and foremost, it just shows or proves a lot of the advocacy of Family First is often ahead of the curve. So it's great that the National Party and other groups have finally caught up, but you've been speaking into this area for a long, long time. And the other is, of course, that we got to hear from the author of one of those articles, Sophie Wynne-Kelman, now Lady Windsor, who's, she spoke at ARC, the forum that we were at in London earlier in the year, and very compelling, just like Jonathan Haidt, who we've had on the forum. There's good, compelling arguments and statistics out there. You've been raising it for years. And look, I'll put it this way. If the government does finally act, you should take a big bow. And by the way, people listening, I'm not having a pay review or anything at the moment. I'm not here trying to put to a Wind and Bob's sails unnecessarily, but, this is an area you've lobbied for strongly for a long time, Bob, and you need to be acknowledged for that.
Actually, it was a topic that I was just going to touch on, and that is that the King's Birthday Honours List is coming out this weekend once again. Will Simon Rufus O'Connor be on that list?
Not a chance. Not a chance.
Is Rufus your middle name, really?
No, it's not.
No, I didn't think so. Not a good Irish name. Okay.
David, there's the secret. David is my middle name.
Okay. Right. We were just going to touch on the fact you just highlighted an article that you sent through about teens sexting with AI and what parents should be aware of. I mean, far out, you've got three really harmful things there: teens, sexting, AI.
I think probably the main thing for parents to be aware of is a lot of what we perceive the children or young people are going into and seeing on the internet is not what we might expect. So it's not just simply accessing porn sites or terroristic material and violence. There's a whole new level now of AI. And we had that terrible, was it a suicide last year of a young person who thought he had a relationship with someone. It turned out just to be a chatbot. And AI now is developing not only the visual side of things, which is worrying in itself, but also communication. So it's just the depths and complexities here are very, very significant, which is why government needs to act.
Yeah, and I mean, this was one of the issues back in 2020. Some of the bills were around putting internet filters in public places where there's Wi-Fi, so that you haven't got someone accessing pornography in a cafe or a library where there are children, even at airports. There was also internet filtering around schools because some of that was a bit unreliable. So it was some of the basics. In fact, we had all the legislation drawn up. And Labour and Greens, who were in power at the time, with the majority government, by the way, with Labour, they just didn't, it was June. So no, it was just before that infamous election in 2020 when everybody lost their rag and didn't quite figure out how to vote properly. But it gave Labour the majority. But, it seems like the concern has been there for 5 years, in fact, we had a paper out about the excess of screen time. And now suddenly the Dominion Post is suddenly saying the amount of screen time is a public health emergency. Well, we put out that paper back in 2016. People could see it was a problem. In fact, the writer of this article is actually, so it's a UK article, and they're obviously concerned about it in the UK. Jonathan Haidt is mentioned as well. But they said that the main concern was when schools were actually giving out iPads to kids and getting a lot of the work being done on screens. And that was the issue that we raised in the paper, is that the Ministry of Health said that kids should be restricted to 2 hours per day, but they didn't take into account all the screen time kids were having at school as part of their education. It seems like we've really dropped the ball on this, and it's like the adults in the room were so enamored with technology that they actually didn't think about whether this was going to be good for kids. I mean, is that a fair summation?
Oh, I think it's a perfectly fair summation. I think probably what's beginning to happen is the research that you commissioned, the advocacy that you've done, has slowly filtered into people's minds that actually, as parents, it's been 5 years since then, are realizing, gosh, we now have a very serious problem. You try to be the parent to take a device off an addicted child and all that happens. And I think, too, more and more people, as per your poll, are waking up to the dangers now. It's just much more prolific. But you just have to ask yourself how much harm is being done in all those years. And the other quick thought, reading that article about, because one of the articles talks about putting filters in place on public places like cafes and McDonald's and train stations. It's growing up as adults, realizing, you know what, a little bit of inconvenience to us as an adult is the appropriate response to protect our children. It's sad that, society in general, Bob, isn't there already, but a little bit of inconvenience for adults, a little bit of sacrificing by adults for their, convenience does so much good to protect children. Again, this should be just pushed through ASAP.
Yeah. Okay, just an apology. I haven't got the official Political Playback Cup because I'm actually on the road. I'm actually coming to you live from Waikiki Beach. Sorry, I'll put my suntan lotion on shortly. I wish. Okay, no, I'm not really. Okay, let's have a look at this second story. And look, really concerning, just around, we've raised this concern on Straight Talk about the Ministry of Health putting out documents, and there's a couple of issues that we want to cover off just about the Health Ministry of Health, and is it the Ministry of Silly Ideas? Perhaps they should be renamed. So the first one is the Health Ministry losing count of euthanasia deaths. Can you just update us on what the concern is there?
So 3 and a bit years since the law's been in place, and part of the requirement is every quarter the Ministry of Health, which is responsible, has to tell you how many people have died, how many have been terminated. There's a whole lot of other things they have to report on. But long and short, they keep stuffing it up. So we've talked about this about a year ago, or slightly less, where their quarterly report numbers weren't adding up to their annual report numbers. There were mix-ups and confusions. But this little doozy, or two doozies, to be honest, that have just come to light, I would say, just showing a ministry that's got no idea, quite literally, what's going on. So in one of the quarters last year, they initially reported something like 73 terminations, people who had died by euthanasia. But then a couple of weeks ago, they quietly, and we have to underline that, Bob, they quietly updated the report and added in 56. So you've heard me right, 56 more names. So not quite double the number. So somehow the Ministry of Health missed, lost, forgot, ignored, whatever, 56 New Zealanders who were killed by euthanasia. And another quarter, I think it was the quarter just before it, they said a few, I can't remember the exact number, it was like 20 or 15 were dead.
Eight.
Who weren't. Eight. Oh, gosh. Yeah.
Less.
So 8 people they thought they'd killed, they hadn't. It's a miracle. So this is a ministry that's just basically, Bob, completely incompetent. And I will just underline again, they make these changes on the reports very quietly. They just call it a validation error. So it's great, yourself and other friends, I won't name them because they like to work quietly, who are literally having to go back to the website over and over again, saving the report as it is of that day, and then checking it the next week and the week after to go, oh, they've changed it. They've
Yeah.
found another 56 people they just killed and didn't know.
Okay, I think the other concern, and we're waiting for full confirmation of the yearly figures, but our estimate is shown in this graph, is that there's been a large growth in euthanasia between 2023 and 2024. Now, we say that's subject to confirmation. Actually, that's not per half year, that's per year. So, sorry, I just need to update that graph. So that's deaths per year, big jump to 2024, but we do need to just confirm those figures. But we're not surprised, are we? And of course, David Seymour now is wanting to expand the law. It worries me that we're doing this review of the law when we can't even get the number of deaths right. And if we can't get the number of deaths right, have we actually got the requirements for having euthanasia right in the first place? We're not dealing with giving patients wrong medication and fixing it, or perhaps wrong treatment or something. We're dealing with the state killing people, and they can't keep count.
Yeah,
That should worry us all, shouldn't it?
it should. I mean, you and I write quite prolifically on Substack. Well, you write prolifically. I occasionally put, week by week, but talked about it this week on, firstly, the ministry, as you say, it can't even track the numbers. So what else is it not tracking? Secondly, reporting is always downstream of the problems. In other words, if they can't count the numbers downstream, it's telling you there's problems in behind. And we already know some of them. There were whistleblowers last year from the review committee. And we're not going to go all back through that, but there are problems. Thirdly, the ministry is responsible for the review that they did, and they published it in November. And, what a surprise. The Ministry of Health confirmed that the Ministry of Health was killing people perfectly well. There's no problems to see here, which there evidently are. And you touched on it as well, Bob. They now want to expand it. They want even more people to be involved. So it's not quite scandalous, but it's getting up to that level. And I think we've rightly called that there needs to be an independent review here. We can't trust the ministry anymore, not just on euthanasia, but on a whole lot of issues.
Okay, and a little bit of dark humour. There were 56 underestimated deaths of euthanasia. Somebody sent us this story that said that there were 56 dogs euthanized in 2 months in the far north. So I'm not sure if there's any relation to that. I mean, makes you wonder whether the Ministry of Health are getting human lives mixed up with animals. Anyway, because maybe they can't recognise a human life, which of course is a perfect segue into part 2 of our Ministry of Health examination, and that is that the review of the radical abortion law ushered in by Jacinda Ardern that you unfortunately had to sit in the House and watch happen. And I take my hat off to all of you politicians who were voting against it and trying to bring some humanity to the whole bill. So they've released this 5-year report, and a couple of concerning things that I'll just get you to comment on. Firstly, they admit that women are not accessing counselling. That is showing a drop in the number of people who want counselling. They have to be told about counselling, but they don't have to take it. And so nobody knows whether they're being coerced. Nobody knows whether there's sex selection going on. There's a whole lot of issues that are not being covered with the counselling, whether they just need some breathing space. Maybe they need some support to have the children. And the other thing I noticed in the report is that they talk a lot about later surgical abortion and post-20-week abortion care, which of course is an oxymoron in itself. But basically they're admitting that late-term abortions are happening. We know that's happening because the law now allows for it after 20 weeks as long as you get 2 ticks from 2 abortion doctors. So like euthanasia, there's very loose requirements in place. But of course, that's what they want. The whole problem with this report when I read it is that they are effectively cheering on the growth in abortions. They want increased access to abortions. They're not talking about how do we reduce abortions. They're not talking about the harm of abortion to women. And they're certainly not taking into account the unborn child in any way. And sex selection, no, it's not happening in New Zealand apparently, but they don't actually know because they don't actually ask. So, and the other thing, sorry, Simon, just before you comment, is that they're worried about the stigma because apparently there's a stigma around abortion still, and they just don't know how to get rid of it, and they can't find enough medical professionals who want to perform abortions. I mean, it was just a sorry piece of reading, and I just thought, man, it must be sick being in that office where they're just championing and celebrating killing the unborn child.
Yeah, well, you nailed it. They are, well, I'm going to use that word that I just is very much in my mind at the moment, is they're ideologues,
Mm,
and they're not putting health first. Certainly not the health of the baby. They have no problem with killing babies.
mm,
In fact, as you say, they want more. I don't know who these sick people are within the policy units, but they are sick and they need serious help. But they just want more. And so that's part of the reason they don't want actually people going to counselling, because they want to deny that there's any harms.
mm,
That is without doubt. I mean, take the baby out of the equation, ironically,
mm.
but we know
Yeah.
from multiple studies that this is not emotionally, mentally, or physically always safe for women.
No.
But they don't want to admit that. Therefore, there's to be, an attempt to reduce counselling. All the stuff around language, we are just so familiar with this across a whole array of political elements. The progressives, the left, whatever you want to call it, the woke, the dangerous, always wanting to minimize language. It's no longer assisted suicide, it's end of life care.
Mm, mm,
It's no longer late term abortion. Oh no, that sounds a bit tough. Let's
mm.
call it later term abortion care. So they're always manipulating language. And I suppose my encouragement to viewers and listeners, um, don't buy it.
Mm.
Just keep using the appropriate
Yeah.
terms of what is happening here. And just, again, same with pronouns and all this other stuff. We don't have to play their game. And the last one, and maybe I'll bounce it back to you.
Mm,
It's the conscience rights. They are obsessed with removing the
mm.
conscience rights of doctors, nurses, and midwives around performing abortion. They want to coerce and force health and medical practitioners to kill babies. It's
And
sickening.
and hospices with euthanasia as well. There's concern there, isn't there?
There is. And again, you and I have talked about this a lot. And if anyone follows me, they'll hear me banging this drum all the time. But, it's the great paradox, irony, certainly hypocrisy that, the people who are pro euthanasia, pro abortion, pro death always situate their arguments, poor as they are, as an act of autonomy, as a free choice. And yet, here's the ministry and pro abortion advocates arguing that doctors, nurses, midwives, hospices, care facilities should have no choice.
Mm,
They are more than willing to have all those doctors and nurses sacked. Quite literally, not
mm.
exaggerating, they'd prefer to sack them and clear them out because they want a health workforce committed to death. And let's
Yep.
put it really crudely, bluntly, simply, they are obsessed with death. And if they can chase every person of good ethical will out, they'd do it, even if it causes massive harm. So this is a sort of, the challenge you're up against, Bob, as
Yep.
well you know.
Well, many people will be aware of that verse, the devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And, of course, it starts at the beginning of life with abortion. It starts at the end of life with euthanasia. And now, of course, it's during life with chemicalization and castration of healthy but vulnerably gender-confused kids. And the reason I raise that is because one of the news items that just came out today, and I texted you just before we came on air, is that Te Pāti Māori are saying need to hurry up and come out with the guidelines on puberty blockers, etc., from the Ministry of Health because, apparently they want to trans their Māori kids. There's a group of doctors within unions who want to start chemicalizing and castrating kids as well and confusing them. And boy, we certainly need people to speak up. The reason the Ministry of Health are struggling on this one is because it's hard for them to justify the whole puberty blockers cross-sex hormones because of the CAS review, because of what's been happening in Europe, what's happening in Australia, the UK and the USA. So interestingly, just before we leave the Ministry of Health and our little focus on them, the other thing is that they've decided to move away from Twitter where they had what was it? 45,000,
48,000.
48,000 followers on Twitter, and they've gone to Blue Sky or Blueski. We haven't figured out how to say it. We think the Russians may say Blueski, but everyone else says Blue Sky. And this is the active users. So the blue is Blue Sky. The blue is Twitter, and the red down the bottom there is Blue Sky. So Blue Sky is about 5%. But the Ministry of Health have decided that they're not going to be on Twitter anymore because that mean man Elon Musk owns it. And so they're going to go with all the radical left, and they're going to throw their toys out of the cot, and they're going to go to Blue Sky. But not many are going because most people realize that Twitter is just a free speech platform, and so it should be. But it does suggest to you, Simon, that there's a whole lot of people sulking in the Ministry of Health and don't actually want to inform people about some of these edicts that they're putting out. So they go to this. How many followers did they have on Blue Sky? You checked it.
It was about 154.
Wow.
154 versus 48,000. But I mean, all this does, I don't even think it suggests.
I'm just checking while you talk.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a little bit higher now that, that's been in the news. But at the end of the day, this just confirms how politically captured the Ministry of Health is.
268.
Oh, 268. Well, that's a couple of Green Party supporters and Te Party Maori have gone across. I mean, if you put it quite negatively, and someone did on the show this morning, it's the Ministry of Health doesn't care about people who might lean to the centre right or who might believe in free speech, freedom of religion, freedom of conscience. A lot of the people who are on Twitter, actually one of the only places you can speak, because as we all know, even if you pay for the likes of the New Zealand Herald, your comments get censored on a number of topics. So very worrying, but you know what? It's very indicative of a politically captured, ideologically driven Ministry of Health. They don't care about your health. They just care about the politics, and they're more than happy to compromise your health to push their political agenda by not sharing health news. But kudos, Bob, kudos to the minister, Simeon Brown. I mean, it's ridiculous that he had to step in, but he stepped in and told them that it's completely unacceptable and to pull their head in, which is good to see.
Yeah. I just want to show this comment. Simply Green is correct. Last time the left tried this, they all went to Mastodon, I think is what they called it. I remember that, Simply Green. But that's completely decentralized mesh. So suddenly they had to deal. Yeah, it's true. That's exactly where they went. So they sort of go around and look, they're not worried about Facebook because they still think that Mark Zuckerberg may be on their side. But, Twitter, because that awful man Musk, who's related to the orange man Trump, owns it, then they've got to get away from it. Anyway, so that's Ministry of Health. We've bagged them for a little bit. Ministry of Silly Ideas, perhaps. Fortunately, there's a good...
Felt good, though. Felt really good, almost like a placebo.
Well, speaking of pay equity, which we weren't, there is a campaign by some of your ex-colleagues. And look, I've forgotten the name of the lady that's heading it up. Marilyn Waring. So Marilyn Waring was an ex-National MP, actually, and she did this little announcement, and she's cobbled together all these ex-MPs.
Jackie Blue, former National MP, Joe Hayes, former National MP, Belinda Vernon, former National MP, Ria Bond, former New Zealand First MP, Nanaia Mahuta, former Labour MP, Leanne Dalziel, former Labour MP, Steve Chadwick, former Labour MP, Lynn Pillay, former Labour MP, and Sue Bradford, former Greens.
Woohoo! Okay, so that's a sterling lineup. So these ex-MPs are going to hold a little committee. They're going to take submissions, and they're going to pretend to be MPs again, even though some of them have got voted out, some of them rightly retired, and to be honest, some of them we may not want to see again. Are they going to achieve anything? Is there any point to this apart from virtue signalling?
Actually, I think it's quite a clever move, actually, from their perspective. I mean, look, it holds no authority. It's not parliamentary, but it's going to keep the issue alive. I mean, from their perspective, they've got National Labour, Green, and New Zealand First ex-MPs. Some who have been ministers of women. Someone like Jackie Blue was once the commissioner for women. So these are pretty hard-hitting, serious people who are saying, we don't like what the government's done. And again, I think this is actually quite a strategic move because it's going to attract a lot of attention. It's going to focus attention. The media will keep going back to them. It's what you and I talked about when the government made this decision. They've created a massive rod for their back. And they should be very aware of Marilyn. And I say this in the best of ways. She is formidable. Muldoon found that out, of all people. So, this is just going to keep highlighting. I don't think it is virtue signaling. I think it's actually a very clever political move.
Okay. The police say that they're not going to investigate. A memo came out in an OIA saying that they weren't going to turn up to crimes where it was under $150 for shoplifting, and was it $500 of stuff for a burglary or something like that?
Something like that. Drive-offs from petrol stations. Yeah.
That's right. Okay. So there was a big stir about that, and then the Commissioner and the Minister of Police responded. Let me just show you those two responses because I've got my view on this one. Hang on. So this is the Police Commissioner.
I was very disappointed to learn of a memo that went out internally back in March this year talking about thresholds, because the content of that memo is inconsistent with my expectations as the Commissioner of Police. From my perspective, everybody understands that the demand upon police is such that we have to prioritise the work that we do. There is acceptance and understanding of that. That does not mean we will not be turning up to jobs that involve retail crime when we can. We won't always be able to be there, but we will do our absolute best for the retail community to hold offenders to account.
Okay, so that was his response. And then Minister of Police Mark Mitchell was on the platform with Sean Plunkett and had this to say.
Of course, police will respond where they can. However, they do prioritise. They've always done that. Even when I was back in the job, we prioritised. If I had, as a police dog handler, if I was tracking offenders from a violent crime and there was a call to go to a shoplifter, then I'd have to prioritise and track offenders from a violent crime. But if I was free and there was a minor shoplifting job coming, then I'd go to that and attend that. So that nothing should change. Our expectations as government is that's exactly the way policing should be done now. Of course, there's massive pressure on resources. There's no doubt about that.
Okay, I'm going to be the cynic here, Simon, sorry, and just say, look, they have told us nothing new. That memo just said the quiet bit out loud. The fact of the matter is the police don't have the resources to turn up to every crime. They're probably not going to turn up when somebody walks out with a trolley full of goods from a local supermarket. They're probably not going to turn up when some shoes get stolen from outside your house. And I think that probably we all realise that. In fact, I had some friends who were working at a retail place. They had footage of the person actually taking it. They could identify. They never heard from the police, even after making the complaint. So I just think the memo said the quiet part out loud. And if you listen closely to what the Commissioner and the Minister of Police are saying, they're actually saying, we've got limited resources. We have to prioritise. So yeah, probably we're not going to turn up to those smaller crimes.
Yeah, look, I share this. I mean, I couldn't help but think, because over in the States a few months ago, Rachel and I, and long and short, I was in one of the Walmarts, as you do, and I was struck the few minutes I was in there, the number of people who just walked in, and there was one guy, young guy, and his partner. I don't know if they were married or not, doesn't really matter. But anyway, they walked in, grabbed a 5-litre bottle of washing liquid, and then just walked straight back out, and no one blinked an eye. Security, the staff, nobody. And so I suppose the first thing is people have to understand that if our police don't address these issues, it just gets worse and worse and worse. And just go and look on X or Twitter, or if you're desperate on Blue Sky, look up New York, look up California and retail crime. It's got worse and worse because, again, police don't deal with it. But I think there's a gap, unfortunately, between the memo and what the Commissioner and Minister are saying. What the Commissioner and Minister are saying is completely understandable. Yeah. We all accept there's priorities. You'll never have enough police to cover every crime. And just like Mark Mitchell was saying, you don't expect the dog handler chasing a violent crime to stop and run off someone who's grabbed a Snickers bar. Yeah. But what the memo says is actually said that the quiet bit out loud is they actually don't deem certain behaviours as criminal. And that is actually an important distinction. And so I don't actually feel that the Commissioner or Minister actually answered the question around what's really happening with that memo. Again, prioritisation is one thing. That's not what the memo was saying. It was saying, I'm sorry, it's certain amounts of money, we're just not even going to bother. And again, look at New York, look at California, where that ends, and it's not pretty.
Yep. Okay, now something that wasn't pretty was some comments made by Erica Stanford in the House, the Minister of Education, also the Minister of Immigration. Now, she was getting in trouble for sending documents to her Gmail account so that she could print them out. And so there was a bit of a furor in that, but in response, she then made some interesting comments about the fact that she treats emails as spam, and to be honest, I think a lot of us do. But anyway, she got in trouble for saying this. So this was the coverage of it.
Erica Stanford, trending in India for all the wrong reasons.
Look, I understand that my comments have been taken wildly out of context, and that's very disappointing.
While the minister taught a school in Christchurch today, comments she made earlier this month were sparking debate on the other side of the world.
His minister has come under criticism for her remarks in Parliament. These have been perceived as racially insensitive towards Indians.
Here's what she said.
I receive a lot of unsolicited emails, like things, for example, from people in India asking for immigration advice, which I never respond to. I almost regard those as akin to spam.
She was responding to a question about her earlier email scandal when she emailed government documents to her personal account. But describing Indian citizens' emails as akin to spam, well, that's become a diplomatic scandal.
Yeah, I think she could have expressed it better. I get that. But the point is, she genuinely was talking to a volume of unsolicited emails she gets from people all around the world. Obviously, the recent case was obviously ones that were at the top of her mind was from India.
Okay. Cynic and me again, storm in a teacup. I think everybody can relate to the fact that you get a lot of emails. I mean, what if she'd said Russian? Or actually, where do I get a lot from? And I better not say where I get them from because I might be...
From me.
No, Russia, but there's also another country that there's a couple of African countries where I seem to get a lot of emails. I mean, as a Minister of Immigration, she wouldn't want to be dealing individually anyway. I mean, it's not actually her role to be for people. I mean, people are being pretty presumptuous and forward to be emailing her direct, aren't they?
It's something that happens a lot, not just as ministers. I mean, as the Minister of Immigration, she'll get a lot more. I can say as an MP, you got emails from all over the world, people appealing to become citizens. And, that's just part and parcel. At one level, this is a storm in a teacup, but I would add two things to it, which I think makes it more serious. One, it was an injudicious comment. The mere fact of identifying a particular group generally doesn't help. So I think it was an injudicious comment, but also, excuse me, we are trying to get a free trade agreement with India at the moment, and they don't take kindly to these sorts of comments, and this is well known. And that's why it's just really bad timing. So the Foreign Minister, New Zealand's Foreign Minister's there at the moment, and the proof that this is problematic, Bob, is so many Indian media channels are pushing it. So it's probably set things back, I'm sad to say. If I was to put my foreign affairs hat on, it doesn't mean it's all over or unsalvageable, but when you've got day after day coverage of the Minister of Immigration saying what she did about Indians, that isn't going down well in India. So there has to be a bit of work to repair it.
So my cynicism, where I think it's actually quite hilarious, and if she'd said it about Chinese and the Chinese had been upset, or the Russians and the Russian had been upset, and I'd just say, well, toughen up. Maybe go through the official channels like everybody else. So am I being a bit misunderstanding of diplomatic relation? That's why I'm not a politician, Simon. The diplomatic relationships wouldn't be too hot. I mean, is Winston really going to get a hard time because of that throwaway comment?
Yeah, he will. He will. The Indian media will ask him all about it, because what it is she's saying basically, well, has it been perceived? Okay, and this is the thing, it's always about how people perceive things. What you say, how you write something is always secondary to actually how people take it. I mean, you and I have given talks, I'm sure you've given sermons, and someone comes up to you afterwards and said, oh, this part here where you talked about cowboys and Indians, it was amazing. And you're going, did I? I never even talked about that. So how people hear things and receive it's what's important. And at the end of the day, the Indian media have heard a minister from New Zealand say that she treats messages from Indians as spam. That's what they're upset about. And I can bet your bottom dollar that's one of the first questions every journalist in India is going to go after Winston on, and it probably will get raised by their ministers behind closed doors as well.
Okay, just as a light bit of humour, Rusty says, Storm and a dual mark up.
Oh, no, now you and I will be on the front page.
Ah, dear, very good. Okay, let's move on.
I think,
Interesting.
by the way, I think Dilmar's actually Sri Lanka. I'm just going to throw that out there briefly, with no offence to our people.
Hey, Lemon Rusty leads us up the garden path. He should go and work for CNN. Okay, let's look at this one. This is an interesting one. And look, there is something to clarify just at the end of it. But on Newsroom, their news website, they had this article, and it was talking about referendums and polling and how politicians often go against what the polls say and what the referendums may say. Of course, classic one for us is the anti-smacking referendum, 87%. But anyway, in the middle of the article, there was this comment about the fact that we'd done some polling, as we did on social media bans. We did some polling on the 3-strike legislation. And it says, one poll commissioned by Family First and anti-abortion Christian lobby group. And it just seemed totally out of place because it was talking about, one, polling, two, about a justice issue, 3 strikes, which sort of doesn't have that morality thing quite as much as abortion does. And it just, the statement seemed to be thrown in. Next minute, we looked and it had gone. It had disappeared. So I actually made contact with the authors and I said, was the little line about anti-abortion Christian lobby group in your op-ed? It was an opinion piece. It wasn't. And so Newsroom had actually inserted it. Now, in fairness, just before you comment on this, Simon, in fairness to Newsroom, I was actually contacted by them with an apology, said that it was added by a sub-editor and they had revisited their policies around this. I did ask them if there was going to be a little note saying this article has been updated. I haven't checked to see if it was, but I think it just does raise a bigger issue about, and it's always been the thing that I've worried about when I've submitted an op-ed to any newspaper, is that they take the op-ed, but then their own editors make their own title. But for them to actually insert a hit on a group that, and the hit was totally irrelevant, it actually, I mean, that's quite disturbing, isn't it? But maybe not surprising.
It's not surprising, but it is disturbing. I'm actually thinking there was another case too. It's in the old trans women's rights space a few months ago. Someone who put in an opinion piece, and she's a woman who believes in biological reality, and chose to write in that narrative, and had a huge fight with a mainstream newspaper who wanted to change everything. But coming back to what's being done here by Newsroom, look, 3 things. It's great to be anti-abortion, and it's great to be pro-life, and it's great to be Christian. That's the first thing. Secondly, what does this tell you about the thinking of Newsroom, that they felt they had to insert that into someone else's opinion piece? It shows you their heart, which is pretty much pro-death, anti-Christian, which, you know what, if you read a lot of Newsroom stuff, it's just, well, don't. Basically, guys, let Bob and I read Newsroom. It's a bit like the spin-off and most mainstream. It's just a waste of time. But the third point, too, is what an arrogance to believe they can change someone else's opinion piece. So this is not your standard reporters. This is 2 people, both actually well-respected, who wrote their piece. It's in their name. And yet Newsroom thought it was perfectly fine to add more in as if they were saying. I mean, that is arrogant, it's misleading, but it's also, maybe this is the fourth point. But this is just indicative to everyone of the corrupt media that we have in this country. And you just have to be aware of it. From the headlines to the words that chosen to what they're telling you, they're corrupt. And so it makes life very difficult because, all of us are trying to work out what is true or not. And I think it's part of the reason we're showing this here tonight to people is just be so aware of the bias and the corruption that is around you.
Yep, and I think in fairness, look, they apologised when we called them out. They say they've changed their policy, so we'll monitor that. I'm still waiting to hear back from the New Zealand Media Council about my complaint about Andrea Vance's article using the C word and the misogyny against female MPs. So we'll update that next time we come to that. Anyway, time is racing, so let's keep going. Look, I'm a radio buff. I've always been fascinated by radio ratings, what works, what doesn't. And a little observation that I've made is that I wonder whether people are not listening to the radio. I mean, we know that they're not watching TV as much, but they're also not listening to the radio as much. Now, there's two things. Firstly, the latest radio audience, the red bars are Radio New Zealand. That's the ones that you and I pay for, the government channel. And their ratings have been tanking in the last 5 years. The blue line is News Talk ZB, which is a commercial radio station. They have to stand on their own 2 feet and prove their worth. They too are dropping slightly. Now, just with Radio New Zealand, obviously they had their funding slashed in the budget, which everybody celebrated. But so everybody's saying, well, Radio New Zealand's in trouble. Should we actually be funding them as a government by the taxpayer? Should they be left to survive commercially and prove that people want them? But here's the other thing. I think News Talk ZB also, as a talk station, should be a little bit worried. And the reason is because this was the latest data about, so My is My FM. It's a music station in Auckland, big Pacifica population. And in the ratings per week, for the first time since 2020, since COVID, when we all wanted the latest news and, the podium at 1 p.m., the music station has actually taken over. And as you can see, My FM is actually level pegging with Mike Hosking's breakfast show. So what this is showing is that both for Radio New Zealand and for News Talk ZB, our desire to get our news, our political news as well, is actually declining. People are listening, and perhaps they're listening more to podcasts and political playback and Simon's free speech show on RCR. It's an interesting trend. What do you reckon?
Well, the first thing, if you keep that up, notice there's no blue sky icon.
Funny that. Yes, top right.
I think there's probably 2 quick observations. I think, people do want music. They don't want commentary. I think it's probably a little bit too, people are switching off a lot of the political discussions. It is toxic, very divisive. People aren't able to express themselves. So I think, worryingly, actually, people are retreating to just, music, but also we just don't want to engage with issues. And that is a problem, because it doesn't matter if it's pro-life issues or to the Treaty of Waitangi, climate change, whatever. Actually, we do want people engaging. But I think this is showing that they're switching off. I mean, Radio New Zealand, unfortunately for them, is just well known for being very compromised when it comes to politics. I've said it before. Their nickname is Red Radio. Just listen to their interviews. Morning Report used to be really good. Now it's basically just left-wing cause after left-wing cause. If you're a Chloe Swarbuck, they will give you a nice, easy ride. If you're Nicola Willis, they will go after you. They'll have Greenpeace on, they won't have you on, Bob. And, we can go on and on. So they're beginning to tank because people are sick of it. And actually, the government should just stop funding them. If they can't stand on their own 2 feet, well, who cares? There's a whole lot of other stations. But again, millions of your dollars are still going in. And then they've got that, don't they? Are they behind RE colon as well? Supposedly the youth.
Yeah, no, that's TVNZ.
Oh, is that TVNZ?
Shocker.
But that's still all
horrible.
government funded. But it's just horrible. It's just left-wing progressive propaganda. And, at the end of the day, and this is my final point, people vote with their feet, or in this case, their ears. They just switch off. They go elsewhere.
Yep. I mean, if we're an investor as a taxpayer, We're getting less and less return for our money on the on the red bars, which are Radio New Zealand. So, maybe we should be rethinking that. Maybe that's the reason that they decreased the funding over the next 4 years. So that's going to make it tougher for them as well. We have got time to cover this very quickly because I know you're a fashionista. And that is the fact that Nicola Willis, when she turned up to do the budget, apparently some people didn't like her dress because they went online and using AI, they figured out that apparently it wasn't bought from a New Zealand designer, it was a UK designer. Are we really that petty-minded?
Yeah. Well, not we, the media are. I mean, again, we talked about it with Andrea Vance last week. It's had this been another person, had this been critiquing Jacinda Ardern, it would have been all on. Very few comments were ever made about Michael Cullen or Grant Robertson. There are some articles about what suits they were wearing and designers. But because Nicola is centre-right, in this case a National Party MP, she's fair game for what really is just bigoted, misogynistic commentary. It's pathetic, actually, just completely pathetic. And I thought her response, something about the 1950s returning was appropriate. Chris Bishop, who's there in the photo, spoke out strongly. Just really, really pathetic, because that same media, and I can't read the reporter's name here, and there was a few of them, had that been someone critiquing Jacinda Ardern, that person would be on the front page being slammed for how dare they. But again, this is the double standards of media. But I will say one last thing. Unlike a certain Green MP, Nicola paid for her dress. By the way, Jacinda never paid for hers. New Zealand designers gifted them to her to wear, which, of course, the New Zealand designers complaining at the moment never do that for Nicola. Again, complete double standards.
Did you ever get offered outfits when you were in politics?
No. Okay. No is the short answer. I was trying to think of something witty, but I just can't.
No, okay.
Partly true, because I don't know about if you're down the line here in Auckland, the heavens are opening. It is bucketing down here at the moment.
Okay. Now, very sad news is that you won't be here for Political Playback next week. You are overseas on yet another junket. So I have Ro Edge, who's going to be our guest panelist next Thursday. Ro's a great commentator. Wins. She is on. She's on Twitter and huge following, lots of commentary. So we're going to enjoy that. I think the last time we both ran into her was at the Inflection conference in Wellington. She's from was it Protect Women's Sports Australasia? No, Protect Sports Australasia.
So you're right.
I think. Yeah. Thank you.
You know you are. You're right.
I am right. Okay. I was back in 1997 as well once. So Ro Edge is going to be our guest next week. And then the following week, I'm on a junket. And who's your guest?
I have Brendan Malone coming on. And if people know Brendan, he's amazing. So really, Bob, what this says is after these 2 weeks, Political Playback will be run by Ro Edge and Brendan Malone. We're out of a job.
And the audience will absolutely love it. Thank you for watching. Sorry we didn't get to all your comments. They have been pouring through, but we just didn't get a chance. But we will be back on Thursday, Ro Edge next week, Brendan Malone the following week. And tomorrow morning, we'll do a little bit more discussion. Is it Friday? Yes, we're going into the long weekend. Friday, we've got Daybreak, and I might have a little guess about who's going to get King's Awards over the weekend. And Simon tells me, you haven't received the letter, Simon? No.
I think I'll have a heart attack the day that I do.
Yeah.
It'll be that much of a surprise.
Okay. Anyway, all good. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.